Senator Roy Blunt, who joins us. Senator, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Interesting week, huh?
Cardinals have won their division, looks like to me, and what great baseball this week. And always fall's a good time of year if you're a Cardinals fan.
Oh, it's going to be fun. And, yeah, I think we all wanted to win the division. And you're right, you don't want to get too far ahead of it, but it does look pretty good right now. And you didn't want to get into that one wild card game like last year. So we'll see what happens. You know, you're in the if you're in the dance, you got a chance, right?
Exactly.
So
what a great season they've had with the pitching squad they've put together and clutch hitters, and it's just been Cardinals baseball at some of its very best.
It's been a very interesting week in Washington this week. So I want your take on what you think. Let's start with Ted Cruz and the talkathon. Outside of what he was trying to accomplish, and we'll get to some of the specifics on that and where you are, and I believe I know where you are, but I want to make sure the listeners know. What do you think about the talkathon? Have you ever done anything close to that?
You know, I don't know that I have, and since it was the fourth longest speech in the history of the Senate, not very many people have ever done anything quite like that. And you know, I admire people who are convicted that they should do something. This was a case where I thought Ted was trying to do something that everybody, including Ted, agreed was impossible to do in any likelihood anybody could see. But he and Mike Lee and others who really are joining my years of opposition and the total opposition of every Senate Republican to the president's health care plan is a great thing. And I don't have any particular interest in criticizing how somebody else wants to make their feelings known on this, because people will suffer, as I said on the Senate floor yesterday, from this health care plan that's not going to provide the service. It's not going to insure the additional people that the president had said it would insure. It's going to cost a lot more.
But as you said, I mean, and I think Ted Cruz is aware of this. This move to try to defund Obamacare, it just wasn't going to be possible, was it?
Well, you know, he told the House Republicans the day that they sent the bill over, or were getting ready to send the bill over, that, of course, Harry Reid will have the votes to take this out. And the fact is that, you know, Republicans are in the majority in one half of one-third of the government, and that doesn't allow you to do the kinds of things you could do if you were in the majority in the Congress, both houses, and had a White House that was going to sign the bill they got. Somebody said that putting the bill on President Obama's desk that would end Obamacare would have been like putting a bill on President Reagan's desk that would outlaw the Second Amendment. There are some things that presidents just will not do, and this would have been one of them in my view, and I think everybody that really looked at the situation and what had to happen understands that. And, you know, the other thing is that most of the president's health care plan is mandatory, not discretionary, which means even if there's no appropriated money to run the government, those things continue to happen. The exchange continues to operate. The spending to set up the exchange continues to operate. All those things continue to happen. And of course, what we're seeing is every day almost the president waives another requirement in the law, which he did today on small business plans. And this is a system that's collapsing under its own weight. So, yeah, my own personal view of that is that that a fight that you know you're going to lose is usually not very encouraging to the people that need to be on your side in a fight. People want to get in a fight where they're winning, not losing.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you on that. But this is all tied into, and this Democrats took great offense to this. This is all tied into the debt ceiling and then keeping the government open. So, Senator Roy Blunt, should the government be kept open and the debt ceiling raised?
I think there are two separate questions there, and the answer is, at the end of the day, probably. The answer is yes, those things should both happen, but the debt ceiling fight is a better fight to drag out than the government operating fight. Virtually everybody believes that the party who doesn't control the White House in any shutdown that's the party that gets the blame. when the president's numbers are going down on every category, why do we want to change the topic to where somehow it's about whether we are responsible enough to run the government or not? But if the government's running in October when the debt ceiling comes up, I think that's a much better fight for us, because then, so somebody gets their check one day late. This doesn't mean no money is going to come in. It just means 100% of the money going out may not be coming in every day beginning October the 17th. And when you've got a debt problem, what should you be doing about that? You should be finding ways to stop and slow down and reduce spending. And the president's idea that he won't negotiate on that is just ridiculous. Of course he's going to have to negotiate, as many presidents have had to in the last 50 years. When spending is creating a new debt challenge, you ought to be talking about spending, and we will be. And one of the spending things to talk about is let's postpone the implementation of the health care plan. Let's continue to put that off until we can figure out how we have enough troops to actually repeal it and correct the old system so that it serves the American people and Missourians better. It was a great system, but it wasn't a perfect system.
So how do you then do that procedurally moving forward and actually achieve that with the math that you have right now?
Well, it would be easier to do, again, if you had majorities, but with the debt ceiling, I don't think you have the same daily pressure of people who may be getting their Social Security checks, but they can't call the Social Security office if they're not getting their check, or the mother that calls me and says my son or daughter who's in the military is not getting their check. What should they do? The daycare center on the post that my daughter-in-law, who's here while her husband is in Afghanistan, is closed. How can she go to work? Those are not the kind of things that members of Congress have good answers for. But if the call is, I'm told that some government contractor is going to get their check a day late, you say, well, it's really, I wish they were going to get their check on time, but we've got to solve this spending problem, and we've got some time to solve it. It's a different kind of pressure on the Congress to respond, and it's consequently the president doesn't hold quite the cards in the debt ceiling vote that he may hold in shutting down the government.
So when you get to that battle, you actually think that there's a legitimate chance then to delay implementation and to really get something on the table that would...
I think there's a legitimate chance, particularly since he delayed implementation of the employer requirement.
Right.
How you could justify that the employers don't have to pay a penalty if they're not offering insurance, as the law says, but individuals still have to pay a penalty if they don't get insurance. How do you justify that at all if you're the White House or the 4 Democrat senators running for re-election in states that the president didn't carry? I think it's time we got this focus back on them rather than on people who have consistently questioned, challenged, done all we could to point out that the president's health care plan was not going to work.
What's your take, Senator Blunt, there seems to be, and maybe this is perception and not reality, but obviously there were some Republicans that were critical of what Ted Cruz was doing this week. And then if you're critical of Ted Cruz, or if you see that perhaps this isn't the way to achieve the end goal, then there are people like Tom Coburn, for example, that are being called by conservative bloggers rhinos, which I think that's unfair. But there is this split that's out there, and it's within the Republican Party. On the Senate side in particular, is that healthy?
It's not healthy, and it's not a fight we should be having. The future of the country is at stake in many ways, and we can win this fight if we don't spend our time fighting each other. When you're no longer fighting about the shared goal, the shared end result, but you're fighting about who has the best tactics, and somehow you're not a real Republican if you don't think those tactics will work, then that's a problem. When you look at Tom Coburn or the great commentator Charles Krauthammer or the Wall Street Journal editorial page, which lots of conservatives look at many times during the week, all of them and many others have said from day one, credit to our friends who are trying to come up with a plan that will work, but this plan will not work, and we ought to look in another direction.
Senator Roy Blunt, always great to have you on this afternoon. We've run out of time.
Great to talk to you. See you soon.
All right, thanks, Roy.
You bet.